Okay, hello all, and welcome to our HL7 member webinar series. This is our TSC updates for April 30th, 2024. So here's our agenda for today. I'm Rick Geimer, the TSC chair-elect. I'll be delivering the introductory material on this one. We're going to go over just the TSC membership for those who aren't aware, and some of our latest decisions, like on HL7V3 reaffirmation policies, co-chair responsibilities. We'll present a new real-time ballot health report, and then just bring up any, a few recent TSC discussions. Next, I'll be handing over to Dan Vreeman. He's our Chief Standards Development Officer. He's going to discuss a new video on ballot reconciliation, a session on respectful communication. Also discuss the co-chair discount on the WGM for 2024, some discussions on the fire community process. There's a new resource for fire testing best practices. And lastly, collaboration on the World Health Organization on making multilingual IG updates to the IG publisher. Next, we'll hand over to Daniel Bach, our HL7 community manager. He'll talk about the HL7 contributor engagement plan. And then lastly, Diego Kaminker will go over some changes in foundry.hl7.org. So for folks who aren't aware, this is the current makeup of the Technical Steering Committee, the TSC. Our fearless leader, Jean Deteau, is our TSC chair, and I, Rick Geimer, am the vice chair. Normally, Jean would be delivering these updates, but since I was dumb enough to volunteer for it, he gets to sit back and drink margaritas and laugh at me while I flounder. Our next member, Dan Vreeman, he will not be floundering through his. We have also our affiliate and realm reps, Christoph, Chris, and Alexander, for anything US realm or international related. Our working group representatives, Cora, Lloyd, Ricky, Brian, and Juliet. If you're a working group member and you are have some questions about how the TSC operates or how to interact with us, you can think of your working group reps as your local friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, I guess, to help you untangle the web of TSC policy and procedures. Next, we have our product management group reps, Gino, Rob, Amit, and Linda. Our implementer reps, James and Jeff. And lastly, our two ad hoc members, Austin Chrysler, because we're still trying to figure out how to clone him, and David Pike. Well, if our working group reps were the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of the TSC, that begs the question, who is the villain? That would be David Pike, or as we like to call him, Dr. Gom. So our first key topic here is our new V3 reaffirmation policy. As folks have been aware for some time, HL7 is slowly moving away from HL7 version 3. And it's the TSC policy now that V3 content be retired unless there's a serious reason for reaffirmation. So some questions to consider for things that might be serious reasons. Does your committee have the intent and capability to keep maintaining this content? Another one would be, does the implementer community require this content to maintain its ANSI certification status? So a few more things to consider. HL7 does permit dependent standards like data types, ITS, et cetera, to be withdrawn if there's no intent to maintain this content. HL7 also permits specifications to exist as American National Standards, ANSI standards, even when its dependent standards have not been reaffirmed. So that's one more reason why maybe you don't need to reaffirm something, even if you think you might. And lastly, if a specification is referred to in regulation, committee should try to see if it's if the requirement of being of the specification being a standard was intended by the regulation. So full details on our reaffirmation policy are available here. You can also just go to the TSC page on Confluence and look under our TSC policies. So next up are co-sponsoring workgroup responsibilities. So the goal of this was to clarify really what it means to be a co-sponsor. One of the ones that's always been around is, the need to review and approve ballot content, and basically just be involved in the development balloting with specification and be in the loop when any approvals are needed. But after much discussion, we decided there should be some additional responsibilities. So for starters, on a project scope statement form, for instance, they should provide a rationale for why they wish to be a co-sponsor. They should also, a co-sponsoring work group should also provide a link to their mission and charter, which describes why this is related to their scope of work. And this is probably the one of the most critical ones, to provide one or more resources to assist with the project work. So in other words, it's not sufficient to just say we want to be a co-sponsor. You actually need to be involved if you want to be a co-sponsor. If you don't feel you can meet these responsibilities, your work group can't, perhaps consider being an interested party and then providing comments via the ballot mechanism. But if you really think you should be involved anyway, you can always appeal to the TSC if the project or the primary sponsoring work group has any issues with co-sponsorship. So there will be some updates to the PSS form to help clarify these responsibilities, and probably a pilot period while we work through all the idiosyncrasies here. Whoops, I didn't mean to escape out of presentation mode. Let me go back there. All right, so this is something exciting. This is a new report that Lynn Laxo has produced and is now up on the HL7 website. You'll find this under the basically, if you go to resources, work groups, and then technical steering committee, and under reports, you will find this new ballot health report. So this is real-time metrics on your work group's health with regard to ballots. So the key ones that are captured here are what active ballots you have, which ones are unpublished, idle, expired, have not completed reconciliation, or are eligible for recirculation. Also on here at the after you look at that diagram, that chart with the various work groups and your individual work group metrics, you can scroll down to the bottom and you'll find a link to all the full reports that have all the details, the exact ballots that are in question for each item, such as unpublished or expired, etc. So you can click on those and then get a list by work group of the actual items. So full details, again, you can click on this link or just go to the HL7 website, go to work groups, TSC, and reports. All right, and lastly, for mine, I didn't want to go into too much details, but I just wanted to highlight some of the kind of discussions that we have on the TSC. These are some of the recent ones that we've been over. Some of these are discussions in progress. Some of these are decisions that are being wrapped up and such. But if folks want to be involved in the TSC, want to see the kind of things that we're discussing, here's some examples, like having proxies and closed membership groups like FMG and such. So let's say if Graham won't be there and he wants to have Ruben Daniels be his proxy. How does that work? Where's the documentation on it? Are also talking about having management groups review cross-paradigm project scope statements. Previously, they have been out of the loop on that. Also discussions on TSC board chair elections, whether we should select from our own members or continue with open elections. The decision there was to continue with open. How do we automate production of change logs in implementation guides, and what kind of tooling does the TSC recommend that the HL7 pursue there? How do we handle multi-version IGs? It seems to be time for a cleanup of HL7 essentials and what will that would look like, and so much more. So I would say if you're interested in the kind of discussions that are going on at the TSC, you can go to our Confluence page and look at our meeting index and see what's coming up on our conference calls or minutes of past conference calls. All right, with that, Dan, if you are ready, I will hand over to you and we can get to the interesting part of this call.
Thanks, Rick. Really appreciate that. Great update there. I'm going to pull up my slides here. How's that look, everyone? So far, so good. Yeah, so just a few, thanks. Just a few updates from me. I am Dan Vreeman, HL7's Chief Standards Development Officer. And many of the things that I'm going to cover today find their way into this little diagram, which if you've been hanging around HL7 the last couple of years, you probably have seen this slide come up. It's part of our illustration or thinking about how we're trying to build virtuous feedback loops between our standards development activities and our implementation activities. And so many of the highlights that I'm going to share today will appear on this diagram, as well as the information you're going to get from Daniel Bach and Diego as well. But just to kind of orient folks who may not have seen this before, there's a couple of colors on here and a bunch of icons. The colors sort of indicate how certain kinds of activities in this life cycle are more focused on, say, standards implementation than standards development. But there's also a lot of crossover and bleeding between those as one sort of transitions into the other. And when projects come into HL7, there's a lot of sort of pre-work and sort of forming communities, getting groups of stakeholders to identify their interoperability needs and decide that there is a gap in standards that they want to fill through the creation of something within HL7's standards processes. And that leads to activities such as creating project scope statements and developing specifications, taking them through ballot and resolution. But what we've really been working on, very intentionally over the last 5 to 10 years is sort of enhancing that process with feedback loops that include testing through events like connectathons, I'll say expectation, the encouragement of developing reference implementation software that implements the specification being developed and published as a mechanism for providing feedback on the implementability of that specification, as well as serving as a tool for others who are building their own components to test against, to know whether this their implementation works well and is compatible with the standard or not. In addition to serving as an educational component for those coming in to sort of understand how do these API-based standards look, feel, interact, and work. And so that is a component of our standards development that we've really been excited to make a lot of progress on in the recent past. But we also recognize that, even when we have a tremendous, community input and produce a robust specification, that's certainly not the end of the road. And there's many things that we can do to foster ongoing participation and feedback in the standards process, as well as to help sort of facilitate, implement, and speed adoption of those things through development of additional resources like best practices, and educational materials and so forth. And so you're going to hear about, sort of some updates, a couple of updates on many of these different components. But I also wanted to start by, recognizing that the work that we do is really a collective effort. And each of you, in your own unique way, have contributed to the transformation of health around the world. I want to thank you for your commitment to HL7, your willingness to participate, your willingness to share your unique perspectives. We're really seeing across many, many different contexts of care, true digital transformation take place through the adoption and use of our standards. I want to give a special word of thanks to our co-chairs who really serve as the key leaders in organizing the projects and specification development that happens within HL7. It is a significant role that has far-reaching implications, and the HL7 community at large is truly grateful for your volunteerism, your commitment to participating in this shared work. But honestly, the industry thanks you as well, because this work is sometimes hidden, but has major impact. You may have noticed, as a small token of HL7's appreciation for your commitment to this role of co-chair, that prior to this upcoming work group, we sent out a discount code to apply to your registration. I hope for all of you who are coming to Dallas to join us at the working group meeting that you were able to use that code. If not, you can send a note to our meetings contacts and we can get that applied. But if you weren't able to make it to the May working group meeting, you'll also be able to apply for and alternately use the code to come visit us in September at the Atlanta meeting. So again, thank you so much for your contributions. Now, speaking of Atlanta, I hope you all are making plans to come. I wanted to share a bit of exciting news about our general structure or plan for that plenary working group meeting session, which is going to be of the format of our WGM Plus. And so it'll be sort of the full Connectathon plenary WGM Plus content, as well as our sort of traditionally scheduled work group meetings. But you can see here that the schedule that we've opted for, we've revised a little bit from the last time we did this last May, based on the feedback that all of you provided, which specifically here is represented as the sort of plenary plus content will be consolidated into the Monday and Tuesday morning sessions, with the Tuesday afternoon through the end of the week sessions being devoted to the typical work group meeting schedules. So I wanted you to sort of be aware of that schedule structure, in part as you're thinking about and working through during the May work group meeting, what your plans might be for September. Keep in mind that the time blocks for that Monday and Tuesday AM session, we won't be holding sort of the typical work group meeting sessions, so that we can make way for participation in the plus content. So I hope to see many of you in Atlanta. Now, I wanted to share a little bit of some exciting news that is an outgrowth of our participation and collaboration with the World Health Organization. And you can see here a representation of a multilingual sign. But what we're hoping to do actually is to enable the IG publisher to support multilingual IG publications. And so this work is significantly underway already through updates that you may have seen if you pay real close attention to the publisher release notes and the issues that are included in those. Not complete yet, but significantly on the way. And what this is trying to enable is the translation into multiple languages from a primary language that the IG might be authored in to additional languages. And if you've attempted such a thing before, you know, number one, that, well, it's not currently possible, but even if you're authoring an IG in a language other than English, there are a lot of places where the text that appears on that IG actually comes from places that, heretofore were not able to be translated. So visible text that you see on the IG might come from the individual file resources, might actually come from the core or dependent packages that your IG includes. In some cases, it's rendered based on information that the Java code that presents those resources is, or from underlying terminologies like SNOMED or LangThem that you might be linked to, as well as the narrative content that you as an IG author create. And there are also some places where the template itself renders strings of text in the IG. Our primary focus in this current phase of work is the two that are bolded there and shown in red color, if you can see that, essentially enabling translation for all the content that is coming from the Java code of the IG publisher and the content written by authors. So stay tuned as this work is in progress. We have some initial evaluation pilots planned, and we'll be disseminating more information about how this all works and the process to engage with it as we progress. But I wanted to give you the early heads up that this is a key priority for us to enable internationalization. Now, the other thing I wanted to highlight was the fact that by now, hopefully you are aware of HL7 as HL7 Essentials, rather, as a great place for sort of getting started and finding key documentation. As Rick mentioned, we're continuously thinking about how to improve the content that's listed there, how to get to it, and how to navigate to what you're looking for. but I wanted to pull your attention to the specific set, this kind of new project Start Here tree, which is a great place for just kind of walking through HL7 standards development process. And in particular, this section here, ballot specification and reconciliation, has a great little checklist that sort of outlines the steps related to this phase of the standards development process. But one of the things that has been a little bit confusing to a number of folks that we've tried to make better is the sort of steps around reconciliation packages and contacting balloters to withdraw their negatives once those reconciliation packages are available. And so with a great amount of thanks to Lynn Laxow for producing a really short, to the point and clear video on how to walk through these steps, I thought I would mention to you that that video is now sort of available on this page, and it's a great orientation or review if you are looking for sort of a tutorial on how to execute these steps. And the video really covers kind of steps 9, 10, and 11 as far as interacting with both Jira and the ballot desktop and reaching out to voters. So thanks for that. Whoops, somehow that went away. I'm back. Okay. The next resource that I wanted to share is a special project that was part of our collaboration with the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, the ONC, a project to develop best practices related to fire testing, specifically about reference implementation development. So this resource really kind of lays out a set of recommendations and best practices that help understand sort of the value of and how to incorporate software development in the context of specification development so that those things are mutually beneficial and synchronous. And we're really excited about the number of specifications now that are published by HL7 that have corresponding reference implementations. And this document helps kind of set the stage for understanding what some of those best practices are as we really hope to see that trend continue. The next thing I wanted to highlight for you was a new addition that we added to our co-chair training series. I hope you got the announcements about this and that many of you were able to participate in it, but it is a new session focused on cultivating a supportive culture. I view this as really part of our ongoing journey of fostering a diverse and welcoming community that encourages all kinds of viewpoints and is inclusive of many different kinds of experiences and perspectives. The need for this kind of training was one of the things that you all highlighted in our first co-chair survey a year or so ago. And I'm happy to say that not only will this be part of our ongoing training activities, but it's something that our staff has engaged in as well, and that we're going to continue to make as part of sort of a recurrent theme, because the effective facilitation of respectful communication is essential to accomplishing the goals that we have together. If you didn't get a chance to attend this session live, there is a great video that you can review at your convenience. And so the link to that is also in HL7 Essentials, but also if you see these slides, there'll be a link to that here as well. And so in closing, I wanted to just emphasize that really we believe that the essence of our work at HL7 is about being effective together. It's part of being a vibrant community. And to illustrate for you kind of a new way of thinking about how your individual contributions merge with those of others to create truly transformational impact around the world, I created a little visualization for you showing really just our year to date, but how the individual contributions of those making suggestions about changes or improvements to HL7 specifications get resolved, by community discussion in the context of work group meetings and so forth, and that this is really sort of the day-to-day work of building consensus that leads to robust standards. And so to illustrate sort of how that looks, let me flip over to my video here, and I wanted to share with you a show of your work thus far. wait for the little burst around the WGM. There we go, fireworks. There you go. From year to date until now, thank you for all that you've done to help build out HL7 specifications and to improve interoperability. Now, with that, I'd like to pass the mic over to my colleague, Daniel Bach, who is going to be sharing with us some of the intentional steps that we're taking to help foster and build a great community of practice. Daniel, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Dan. So for those who I haven't met, my name is Daniel, and I serve as HL7's Community Manager, reporting to Dan Vreeman. And before I begin, I would be remiss not to echo Dan and extend a very big thank you to all present members of the HL7 community. So the work you do, as Dan mentioned, and the time you dedicate contribute directly to the cause of HL7 and positive health outcomes around the world. So I'd just like to focus on 3 areas in the short time I have with you, namely 3 areas in which we are focusing to improve the experience of being a member of our HL7 community, but to also grow and scale our community as well. So firstly, newcomer obstacles. A key initiative we've identified in the HL7 strategic plan had been to reach out to new communities. The implication for this for HL7 International has been relying entirely on manual connection to person can cause natural and human errors, for example, gaps and lapses in communication. So no process by which HL7, there is also no process by which HL7 can actually gauge newcomer progress. So also, if we do meet with success in engaging new communities, we also cannot scale this effectively if there is no standardized process by which newcomers are welcome. Secondly, intrinsic motivators. So whether it be personal or professional, the HL7 organization seeks to understand how best to aid members in their respective goals. So one initiative we're working on is combining old and new intrinsic motivators to adapt to the ever-changing landscape of health technology. This is especially pertinent as many organizations are actually angling to become the hub of health interoperability. And we feel as HL7 International, we would like to position ourselves as that hub and that center, as Dan I mentioned in his presentation. And lastly, community metrics. So we currently do have pieces of the pie, quote unquote, in place when it comes to the HL7 community. However, we currently lack a comprehensive picture of how certain community initiatives are faring. So without that detailed, data-driven understanding of how community initiatives are contributing to the growth and productivity of the HL7 community, continuous improvement and iteration is difficult to achieve. So effectively, altogether, these 3 areas represent the main areas of emphasis, or Schwerpunkt, as it's called in German. So continuing on in that spirit of leaving the American sector. So 3 areas of emphasis whereby this community State of the Union, we are actively focusing on pressing on these particular pillars in order to create a better experience for new and prospective members, but also current members as well. So the 3 strategic initiatives that we're working on for 2024 is, as we mentioned, reducing manual effort in onboarding new and prospective members to the HL7 community by creating a robust and standardized onboarding program. So this will be actually presented officially at the upcoming Dallas May WGM. So effectively, what we're trying to do is create that connected tissue that connects all facets of the HL7 community to one another. So the HL7 community, if you were to picture it as a human body, making sure that the left hand knows exactly what the right hand is doing, the left eye knows where the right hand is pointing, and so forth. And secondly, with regards to intrinsic motivators, we are continuing to engage with community members in ways that touch upon their existing intrinsic motivators, while also discovering new motivators. So for example, the co-chair discount is one initiative that Dan has spearheaded. We also do have a small surprise in place for those who are attending the upcoming Dallas WGM. I won't give it away here, but we ask that when you do receive it, you post it on your social media to effectively help us spread the awareness of what the HL7 mission is to the world. And lastly, we are beginning to build a foundation for data-driven community metrics models. So identifying with the tools we currently have in place, the who, what, when, where, and how of what community metrics to measure in the context of the HL7 community. So it's our hope with these initiatives, we can report back at the next TSC update that, in fact, these initiatives have been started, and we welcome all feedback from our current members. And with that, I will pass it off to Diego.
Thank you. I'm about to share my screen. So we will introduce the Foundry during the working group meeting, but you will have a preview today. I'm Diego Kaminker, the CSIO. Moving forward, the concept and implementation of the Foundry, place to find and try the reference implementations. It has two meanings, like everything in our clinical world, at least two meanings. One is the reference implementation handling in our assets. That's cdhl7.org, where we host the reference implementation for some accelerators, specifically DaVinci and FAST. And the other meaning is where we can find the reference implementations for specs in a friendly way. It's a place for specification discovery. What do we do and how can it impact clinical, financial, administrative workflow? Trying it with actual reference implementation clients and servers. This can work for anyone, not only for us. We already know what we are doing. They don't. And also we can test our own clients against an existing reference implementations, or maybe in the future, install the whole stack locally in one click. To be clear, we have usually something in GitHub and with instructions on how to install it. And we want something friendlier to know what it is about and how it works. So two announcements. First is about the assets running, the implementations running in our assets, and the other is about the discovery side. For the reference implementation running in our assets, we are starting to allow implementers to auto-diagnose issues with the running arrays, see the logs, and stop or start the services. And we are improving the service level for accelerators that are using our assets. We installed the business version of Portainer. Portainer is managing our continuous delivery from GitHub and Docker Hub to through our assets. And we now can support users with different scopes. And we are training our own IT staff on maintenance and diagnosis of these components and the overall structure. We also implemented HL7 SSO to integrate it to the overall environment of HL7. And we are adding the reference implementation endpoints to the status report page. Also, we have 2 or 3 persons assigned for the role of accelerator representative into the Foundry, so they have permissions to log in and review the logs and other admin chores. On the other meaning of the Foundry, a place to discover and try the reference implementations. The site is up. You can search by batch. We created a series of categories of the reference implementation, whether they are created by an accelerator or they are about this specific domain, or they are about infrastructure, or they apply only to the US or to other countries or universal. So you can search by that or by text. In this case, I'm searching all the reference implementations that are mentioned in regulation in CMS 0057. But you can also search by technology. I'd like only to see the clients or only to see the servers. We are planning to adjust a little bit more the UX, being able to download and run automatically a reference implementation in your computer or your cloud, and install a series of shared services like EHR, terminology, and authorization services. we are adding all the existing reference implementations, whether they are or not in our assets. I'm creating the projects one by one. We have already 40 or 50 projects and 30 more to go. Once you select one of these reference implementations, once you have searched and selected one, you can see the full details on the description on what this reference implementation do, some snapshots on how it works, where to find the source code, where to provide feedback, how to get instructions on how to make it work, different releases. And if you want to try the client, for instance, you just press the try now button and it will start the client that represents the functionality in the reference implementation.
Beautiful thing, perfect.
So far, we received from the accelerators, from FAST and DaVinci, we received all info, logos, snapshots, descriptions, and they're all up in the Foundry. And we received 3 reference implementations from Argonaut and 1 from Codex about genomics. We are still waiting for more accelerators to send their info. And if you have some info in your work group and you have a reference implementation running, or in GitHub and you want to share it with us, there is a form that you can fill. The URL is here, so we can include your reference implementations too in the Foundry. Dan has been helping me to identify open source projects, and I will try to put everything in the Foundry. And I have a special thank you to Corey Spears from Lantana, who created all the logos and all the descriptions for all the reference implementations. There are 40 of them, at least 40. So I'm very grateful. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. This is Rick Geimer again, and we are at the end of our TSC updates. We can open it up for questions if folks have any. You can also put them in the chat if you don't want to unmute. And sadly, I haven't been keeping track if any popped up while we were going through. All right, I am guessing no addition. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think there is, I saw something on the chat just coming up. Clarification. Okay, there's a clarification from Corey.
Yep. So clarification, not a question.
Yes. That's right.
All right, and Diego did put the link to Foundry in the chat here for folks who are interested. And thank you, Mark. All right, so it looks like mostly comments, thumbs up, and additional detail. So with no further questions, we can wrap up this update. Thank you all for joining, and we'll catch you again. We'll actually probably like at the working group meeting in May, and a future TSC update sometime over the summer. Take care all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.